For unto us in Jesus' name. This is going to be chapter 17, but I got cut off on chapter 16 right at the last few paragraphs. So I'm going to read those first, and then we'll move on to chapter 17. So Amari smiled. Let's see. Where did we end up? Have you ever dreamed about or thought about having your own room? Ricky asked. Amari slowly nodded his head, and Brittany smiled. I thought about having a princess bed. Amari smiled at that and rolled his eyes. Tell you what, Bree began. You two share a room for a few days, and we'll go on the computer and look at what kind of room you want. And you can decide later if you want to have your own room or what you want it to look like, and what you want it to look like. They both nodded. For now, Ricky said, you can sleep in this room, and the bathroom is right in there, he said as he walked to a door and opened it and left it open. So Miss Bree and Mrs. Garcia went into your apartment and gathered as many of your things as they could and put them in bags, he explained. Amari, you come with me and help me carry your stuff in here, and we'll all go through it together and see what else you might need. And we'll make a list, and while we carry it all in, maybe the ladies will make up something good to eat for lunch. We would be happy to do that, Bree said sweetly. All right, that is the end of chapter 16. Chapter 17. It is still Saturday. It's December 14th, the South Kino Estate, Crystal Cove, California. So a few hours later, young Eric and Jordan came in the door to a very quiet house. I wonder where everyone is, Jordan said. Me too. Are you hungry? A little, but I don't want to eat and get full, and then I won't have room for our birthday reservation at the Bayside Grill. It's an early dinner time. He smiled. You know, that is a very sweet and thoughtful birthday present. Thank you so much, 2-3. She shrugged. You're so welcome, but that's not your present. Oh, really? What did you get me? I'll give it to you at dinner. Her expression fell. When she'd bought his gift, she'd been pretty excited about it, but the more she thought about it, it was just a dumb gift. But really, I mean, what do you get a guy who has everything, or could buy anything? Literally anything. He could buy his own island if he wanted to. She sighed. Well, he'll understand the sentiment behind it. What's wrong? Young Eric said with a smile. She shook her head. Nothing. Are you tired? A little. He nodded. Well, we were out late last night and got up early this morning. We did a demo. We worked hard at the church. Why don't you go up and take a nap? We have a few hours before we have to be at the grill. She yawned. I think I will do that. Just a quick power nap would probably help a lot. She shook her head. I don't know how you people do this every day. Well, we don't. We're not always this busy. But we'll get through it. I'm going to have a cookie and a glass of raw milk and check in with my parents wherever they are, and I might join you for that little power nap. She smiled. Okay. She came to him and put her arms around his neck. 3, have I told you how much I love you today? He smiled. Several times. Well, I'm sorry if I'm being too mushy, but sometimes it feels like my heart might explode. Good. Good? Yes, because I feel the same way about you. He put his hands on her waist and pulled her forward and lowered his head and softly pressed his lips to hers. He lifted his head and looked into her eyes. At this moment, I am so happy. This amazing feeling, this human experience of being with the girl I love, of having her return those feelings, I mean, he shook his head. All I can do is say, thank you. Dear Lord, thank you. I'm so grateful for this gift that is Jordan Brooks, soon to be Jordan Kino. So completely grateful. He kissed her again and pulled away and smiled. Now, go rest. I'll be there soon. Sighing, she turned and grabbed the dress bag they'd brought in from the car and hurried up the stairs. Smiling, he watched her go, grabbed a cookie, drank down the milk, went down the hall, and knocked on his parents' door. There was no answer, so he opened the door and peeked in. They were not sleeping. This was a puzzle. He pulled out his phone and texted his dad. Hey, Dad, where are you? Beach. Young Eric headed out. He stood on the deck and scanned the beach. His father was pointing to something out in the water, his other hand resting on the shoulder of young Amari. Eric smiled. Amari and Brittany didn't realize it yet, but their lives were going to improve 1,000-fold. They were going to know what it feels like to be loved unconditionally, to have enough to eat, to have clean clothes to wear, to not live in fear of some man smacking them around, or of coming home and trying to figure out if your mother is sleeping, passed out, or overdosed. Young Eric headed down to join them. Amari looked up as he approached. Hey, Dad, young Eric said. He smiled at Amari. Hey, Amari, you remember me? Amari nodded. Young Eric held out his hand. Amari timidly offered his, and Eric shook it heartily. Heartily. Heartedly. And Eric shook it heartily. Good job. That's how a man shakes hands. Good and strong. Amari smiled. Amari, Ricky began, remember, young Eric is my eldest son, so while you're here, he'll be like your big brother. Eric nodded. That's right. And if you need anything or just want to talk or play or go somewhere, you come see me, okay? Amari nodded. Eric knelt down so he didn't look so intimidating. He looked into the boy's eyes. Hey, I know it's been a hard day, but I promise everything is going to be okay. My mom and dad, they're the best, and we're going to have so much fun. Young Eric stood and looked at his father. You got your work cut out for you, he said in Mandarin. Ricky nodded. Nishe juide. You're right about that. Well, anything you need from me, let me know. Thanks, son. You and Jordan heading out soon? In a few hours. Gonna go take a power nap. Where's Mom? She's with Brittany in the bedroom across from Gabe's. Okay, well, I'll go check on her. Thank you. We'll be in soon. Young Eric nodded and smiled at Amari. See you later, Amari. Amari smiled. He watched the guy run quickly up the long stairs that led from the beach to the house. Upstairs, young Eric poked his head into Brittany's room. Both the little girl and his mother were fast asleep. Brittany was under the covers. Bree laid next to her on top of the covers, her arm draped across the little girl. Taylor's old Charlotte's Web book lying on the bed. He doubted that Brittany's own mother ever cuddled with her for a nap on a Saturday afternoon. He quietly walked into the room, lifted the warm, fuzzy blanket from off the chair by the window, and gently covered his mother. Bree glanced up at him when she felt the weight of the blanket. She smiled. Thank you, sweetie. Eric bent down and kissed her cheek. Love you, Mom, he whispered, then quickly left the room. Next stop, he peeked into Taylor's room. She, too, was sound asleep. He started to head into Jordan's room, but realized he probably didn't smell very good. He'd sweated a lot during the demo, then worked hard at the church. Quickly, he went into his own room, took a quick shower, pulled on some comfy sweats, and headed in to see his girl. Jordan was not asleep. She was blow-drying her long, blonde hair. He stood in the door of the bathroom and watched. She smiled at him in the mirror. His eyes wandered over her. Her hair had grown quite a bit since he'd met her almost 4 months ago. When he'd met her, it fell around her shoulders. Now it was pretty much down to the middle of her back. It was not all the same length. It was not all the same color. It was all blonde, but lighter on the ends, darker underneath, shiny and beautiful. She bent over to dry the underside, her hair hanging down toward the floor. He shook his head. Everything she did made him ache for her. She wore a yellow t-shirt and some gray sweatpants that said UCLA on the leg. Her mouth was in a pout as she tried to run her hand through her hair to make sure it was dry. And finally, she turned off the dryer, laid it on the counter, and picked up her brush. Let me, he said softly. Oh, nope. No one messes with my hair. I'm very tender-headed. I'll be gentle, he said softly, and held out his hand. She sighed and placed the brush in his hand. He took her by the shoulders and turned her straight to face the mirror, and being very careful to be very gentle, he slowly pulled the brush through the long tresses. When he came to a tangle, he very gently worked his way through it, holding the hair above the tangle so if he tugged, she wouldn't feel it. It didn't take long before he was fanning the sleek hair all out around her shoulders, almost playing with it. His eyes met hers in the mirror. Ever thought about being a hairstylist, she asked. He chuckled. Never. Well, if you're movie bombs, you would be very much in demand as a hairstylist. Girls would line up for miles just to get you to brush their hair. Please don't say stuff like that. That girls would line up to have you do their hair? No. If the movie bombs. There is power in words. Oops, my bad. Cancel, she said. He chuckled. He set the brush down, picked her up, carried her to the bed, juggled her over to one hip as he pulled down the covers, laid her down and snuggled in beside her. He pulled the covers up over them both and whispered in her ear, How much time do you need to dress? About 20 minutes. Hey, Siri, set a timer for 45 minutes, he said. He put his arm around her waist and pulled her in close. Sleep, he whispered in her ear. I've got you. She sighed and closed her eyes and allowed herself to relax in his embrace, because this was heaven. New scene. It is still December 14th. It is now 5 p.m. Saturday evening, Bayside Grill, Newport Beach, California. Jordan pulled into the parking lot, flew into a space, and braked abruptly. Young Eric blew out a breath. Now, that was an adventure, she giggled. Thanks for letting me drive your fancy car. It has so much more power and pickup than my old car. Your car is really fun to drive. He smiled. You know, 2-3, you were going 20 miles per hour over the speed limit out on the highway. She shrugged. Well, I was trying to keep up with traffic, and there were still people who were flying past us. He shook his head. Whatever. I let you drive because you insisted that you were taking me out to dinner. But fair warning, I'm taking you home. Hand me the keys. She reluctantly handed the keys to him. He smiled. And stay right there because I'm going to come open your door. She smiled. I'll just stay right here. He got out of the car, went around and pulled her from the car. They headed into the diner. Eric opened the door for Jordan and looked up in surprise as he came into the restaurant. A giant banner was draped across the bar area. Happy 21st birthday, Eric Kino III. The entire restaurant, staff and patrons alike, stopped what they were doing and applauded. Some of them even stood. Eric turned to look at all the faces. Most of them were strangers. He smiled and shook his head in disbelief. He then put his hands together and bowed slightly, then tapped his heart, acknowledging their kindness and how it touched him. Jordan giggled and looked up at him. Surprise. Did you plan all this? No. When I made the reservation, the Vaughns insisted that they be able to do it up big. Well, this is amazing. Thank you, babe. Cal and Ellie Vaughn, the owners of Bayside Grill, came forward and hugged Eric and shook his hand. Eric, we were so delighted when Jordan called and made the reservation. She said she wanted to celebrate your birthday here because it was the first place you ever took her for dinner. And because at that time we invited you to come celebrate your coming of age here, Ellie gushed. Cal smiled. Welcome, Eric. We're so proud of you and all you've accomplished, and we prayed very hard for you back in October when you'd been abducted. And then you came home and won the challenge, and now you're a big movie star. Well, not yet. We'll see how it does. It releases this coming Friday. Oh, believe me, it's going to be a blockbuster. Everyone I know is talking about going to the movies this next weekend. Well, now, come on back, you two, Ellie said. We have a lovely table for you back in the party room. They walked through the large restaurant. Several people stood and shook his hand as they passed, patted him on the back, and congratulated him on making it to 21. Eric's eyes widened as they got to the back room. JoJo and Logan and Melody stood around the table. Happy birthday, brother, JoJo and Logan said. Happy birthday, young Eric, Melody said. He stopped and shook his head and sniffed. Guys, was all he could get out. He looked down at Jordan, who was smiling up at him so sweetly. Come on, sit down, you two, Logan said. Excuse me. Eric seated Jordan, and then Logan seated Eric. This is amazing, he said softly. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you, Jordan. This is an amazing gesture. Jordan smiled and took his hand. Well, it really wasn't just me. I was having a therapy session with Grandmaster Kino, and I mentioned to him that I wish I could do something really nice, like take you out to a nice dinner, but I couldn't even afford to do that. And he said he would like to make that happen for me. So all of this is already paid for by your grandfather. The only thing I did was call JoJo to get him and Logan and Mel here, and then I drove you here. Yes, you did, he said softly. Thank you so much, babe. What an amazing gift. The only thing is, we have to be at Taylor's dance by 8:15, Jordan said. Well, there's plenty of time, JoJo said. We'll celebrate here for a couple of hours and then go see Tay-Tay, and then you two can finally be alone. Yeah, but don't forget, we have a very important church session to attend in the morning. How could we forget that, young Eric said. I'm really looking forward to see who actually shows up and to listen to the sermon you guys have prepared with Reverend Clark and hear you sing, Logan. It's going to be awesome, Melody added. Bristol said she can't thank you enough. She's very grateful. And by the way, she's also grateful for the protection. They all nodded. Did you get the video of what Vanny said to you earlier today before Logan came into the chapel? Jordan asked. Yes, we did, JoJo answered, and also what he and Deuce said after Logan left the chapel. He's really a very bad guy, and almost every word he says is incriminating. He's a real piece of work. Well, he's going down, young Eric added. He smiled. But let's not talk about that. Let's talk about how nice it would be if JoJo had a girl, too. JoJo shrugged. I don't want one until I can get my arm working. When do you start the PT? Jordan asked. On Monday, I can start taking the sling off 4 times a day and practice swinging my arm passively. Then it will probably be after Christmas that I can start an actual physical therapy. Does it still hurt? Young Eric asked. JoJo nodded. Yeah. They gave me pain pills, but Aunt Jeffy doesn't want me to take them. She did prescribe some pills and a tea for the pain, and it works pretty good, but it makes me sleepy, so I don't use it during the day. So are you in pain right now? Melody asked. He nodded a little. No biggie. A server arrived with a tray of shot glasses. Hello, everyone. These are from the Vaughns. He lifted the 2 shot glasses on the left side. These are the real deal, a luxury Scotch whiskey, and they are only for Eric and JoJo. He set them down in front of the 2 guys. He smiled as he passed out the others. The rest of you, I was told to tell you to pretend. Your glasses have ginger ale. Jordan giggled. Thank you. He smiled. My pleasure. Happy birthday, Eric. Have a good night, everyone. They thanked him as he took his leave. JoJo immediately lifted his glass. To you, Eric Kino III, my cousin, my brother, my first friend. May you continue to overcome the darkness. May you continue to bring your light to the world. May you and Jordan continue to be blessed. And may your movie make all kinds of records and bless people the way it blessed us last night. Hear, hear, and amen, Logan said loudly. Amen, the girls repeated, and they all emptied their glasses. Melody giggled. Remember at Alec and Desi's wedding when someone spiked the punch? Oh, yes, I remember it very well, Logan said. Was I just terrible? Melody asked. No, I remember it so well because it was the first night I kissed you. Jordan smiled. She looked around at the 3 very macho guys sitting at the table. Who wouldn't want to be kissed by one of these guys? They were amazing. Handsome, yes. Sexy, yes. Strong, yes. Confident, yes. But mainly it was their light. They were so filled with light. She loved being around them. She glanced over at Melody, who was looking at her. Melody leaned over and whispered, We are so lucky. Jordan nodded. Blessed, she whispered back. New scene. It is still December 14th at 6:30 p.m., Saturday evening, South Kino Estate, Crystal Cove, California. An Ameritech SUV pulled up to the house, and 2 handsome boys climbed out. Lyle and Philip Keith, Taylor's dates for the Christmas dance, headed up the large circular front steps, but didn't have a chance to knock before the door opened. They were still trying to get over the fact that a beautiful movie star was now part of their circle of friends, and here she was opening the door to invite them in. Hello, boys, she said brightly. Don't you look so handsome? Thank you, ma'am, Philip said. Lyle smiled. Thank you, Mrs. Kino. Let me see your hat, Bree asked Philip. She peered closely at the red knit cap. He stood still for her. It's a Rose Bowl hat. Oh, that's perfect. And how are you feeling? Pretty much back to normal. It'll be a few more weeks before they do another CT scan, and then I might be okay to be a little more active. And do you think they'll let you play football again next year? Well, I hope so. I don't see why not. I also play baseball, so that starts up in February. I hope I'll be cleared to play. Me too, Bree said. Come on in and I'll tell Taylor you're here. She should be ready any minute. Bree led them to the den. Ricky looked up from the tablet he was looking at with Amari and Brittany when they'd been looking at different movies the kids had always wanted to see. Where they'd been looking at different movies the kids had always wanted to see. Some of them were not acceptable. A few of them were, but they'd been having a discussion as to why some were not acceptable. Ricky stood. Hey, guys. Hello, Mr. Kino, the boys said at the same time. So you might remember these 2 kiddos from Tuesday night, but this is Amari and this is Brittany. They're going to be staying with us for a while. Lyle smiled. Hey, Amari. Hey, Brittany. Wow, you guys sure got lucky. Why? Amari asked. Because everyone in the world would love a chance to spend some time living with the Kinos. Ricky chuckled. Well, thanks for that. But I'm sure that's not true. However, we're really glad to have these 2 staying with us. His hand rested on Amari's shoulder. Hey, guys. They all turned as Taylor appeared in the doorway of the den. The boys stood motionless, staring at the beautiful girl. The dress was a deep crimson red, almost on the verge of maroon. It was short, coming to about mid-thigh, with a full skirt. The shoulder straps were scalloped lace with sparkles, and the midriff was the same sparkly material. The bodice and the skirt were several layers of a flowy red sheer material. Wow, honey, you look beautiful, Ricky said. Thanks, Daddy. Taylor smiled at Brittany. What do you think, Britt? Do you like my dress? Brittany smiled. You are beautiful, like a princess. Taylor knelt down beside her. Oh, thank you, sweet girl. Tell you what, next week, let's sit together and see if we can find you a princess dress that you like. And we'll get it, and you can wear it on Christmas Day to honor Jesus. Brittany's eyes lit up, and Taylor stood up and smiled at her dates. You guys look awesome. You do too, Philip said. He shook his head. That Gabe is a lucky guy. Taylor giggled. That reminds me, he wanted a picture of the three of us before we go. She reached inside her tiny red purse that was only big enough to carry a wallet, a cell phone, and maybe a lipstick or compact. Handing her phone to her mother, she smiled. Mom, will you take a picture? Bree smiled. Or two, yeah. Bree took several pics and sent a few to the family chat and handed the phone back to Taylor. Okay, kiddos, have a great time. We'll be there to see you dance at 8:15, as promised. Okay, Taylor said. Let's go. She went to grab the dress bag that had her costume and shoes in it. I'll carry that, Lyle said. Thanks, Taylor answered. Philip nodded at Ricky. Nice to meet you. Nice to see you, sir, he said. You too. You guys take good care of my baby girl. Taylor rolled her eyes. Both Lyle and Philip nodded. Yes, sir. Philip held out his arm and Taylor hooked her hand over his arm, and they headed to the door, and Philip opened the door for Taylor, and Ricky and Bree watched the three as they went down the front steps and got in the car. They smiled. These were the moments that you cherish as your kids grow up. Bree snapped off a few pics on her own phone. At the school, the SUV pulled up and the boys helped Taylor from the car. Taylor had a quick flash of her and Gabe standing there in that spot as he explained to her how the bad guys wheeled her out of the school in a wheelchair and loaded her into the van, right there, right in the spot she was now standing. She smiled. Her and Gabe had done some therapy, some bathroom therapy, they'd called it, so that Taylor could get past the trauma of what had happened last August. Inside the gym, the place looked amazing. Taylor had a lot to do with that because she'd described in detail how Pine Forest High School prom committee had worked magic to create an elegant space. And the seniors who were in charge of the Christmas dance decided that they would do even better given their superior resources. Taylor looked around and had to say, they did a great job. Several of the girls she'd been dancing with came rushing to greet her. She came in, including Amber, the cheer captain. Taylor, you look amazing, the girls all twittered. Thanks, you do too. Everyone looks so festive and pretty. Except looks like we all got the idea to wear red, one of the girls complained. Taylor shrugged. So? That's not a big deal. I mean, it's the holiday season, and red is a natural choice of color to be festive. So we all have good taste. Each dress is different, and I think we all killed it. Well, I wouldn't be caught dead wearing all the same color as everyone else. They all turned to see Alexandra's frowning face. She was beautiful in a very sparkly silver floor-length gown. Alexandra liked to be known as the richest girl in school. She wore only designer clothes, designer shoes, designer jewelry, and carried only designer handbags. She was always immaculately groomed. Taylor wasn't impressed by her wealth and was sure the girl had no idea how much the Kinos were worth. Not that Taylor would ever play that game. As far as Taylor was concerned, money meant nothing, especially if it means everything to someone. Alexandra had never tried to speak to Taylor at all during the 4 years of high school. She wondered why Alexandra chose tonight to do it. Taylor smiled kindly. Why? She asked her. Why? Isn't it obvious? Alexandra asked. The girl rolled her eyes like she couldn't believe Taylor would even question her. Yes, it is obvious to me, Taylor said. I just wanted to see if you knew why you think that. So, tell me, Alexandra, why wouldn't you be caught dead wearing the same color as anyone else? Philip and Lyle looked at each other, their eyebrows raised. Was the feisty Taylor Kino about to go off on this girl? Because I don't want to follow the crowd. I'm above all that. I want to stand out from the crowd. Taylor nodded. Oh, that much was understood. But why? Why do you need to stand out from the crowd? I just told you why. If you have some ridiculous point you'd like to make, by all means, please try to make it. Okay, Taylor said. The reason you want to stand out is so that you can get attention. You need attention. You thrive on the attention. And that kind of thinking is so much like the crowd, like the norm. Everyone wants to stand out, and so that makes you one of the crowd. Or sheep, as my father likes to call it. Most people want to stand out and get all the attention. People want to be famous. And then there are people like us girls, she said, gesturing to the other girls in red. She frowned. Well, that's not fair for me to speak for them, so I'll just use myself as an example. I don't care that I don't stand out in the color of my dress. What matters is me as an individual. What matters is what I think inside my own head. You feel like you have to stand out on things that are trivial. Dress color, the car you drive, the people you befriend. I just think that you wanting to stand out from the crowd is so very much doing what you say you don't want to do. Be like the crowd, like the majority. Taylor glanced up at the girl and saw that she'd hit home. She felt immediately contrite. She had no idea why she decided to go off on her, and she sighed. Look, Alexandra, let's not ruin an awesome night that's just barely started. I have to say, in all honesty, you look amazing. Beautiful and fantastic. And you do stand out, and that's cool. Can we forget this silly conversation and just have a good time? Alexandra turned up her nose and then sighed. Well, you do look very pretty too, Taylor. Yes, let's have a good time. Good. Let me introduce my dates to everyone. This is Philip, and this guy is his younger brother, Lyle. They are good friends of our family, and they were so kind to escort me tonight. Philip and Lyle offered their hand to the girls all standing there, and while they did, some guys walked up, including Lance. They were introduced again, and they shook hands with the guys. Lance asked Philip and Lyle what school they went to and got talking about football, and that got them talking and laughing and bonding. Finally, Philip asked Taylor to dance, and one of the cheerleaders asked Lyle to dance with her, and the ice was broken. Several dances later, they were having a great time until one of the chaperones approached to speak with Taylor and Philip, and she wasn't smiling, but Taylor smiled at her anyway. I'm sorry, but you are breaking the dress code, young man. Philip frowned. I am? Yes, you are. Did you not read the dress code? No, because I don't go to this school. Well, then what are you doing here? We were allowed to invite people from other schools. I invited him. And what is your name, young lady? Taylor. The woman turned back to Philip. Well, Taylor should have told you that there are no hats allowed. Taylor rolled her eyes. I didn't tell him because I saw the rule printed up in the program, and I got special permission for Philip to wear his hat. Special permission for a hat? How silly. I'm sorry, no one made me aware of any such exception. Well, I spoke with Mr. Jenkins, the assistant principal. He said it would be fine for Philip to wear his hat, you see, because he just recently had brain surgery. Oh, was that so? I don't lie, Taylor said quickly. Prove it. What? Are you kidding me? Taylor said, not very respectfully. If you don't prove it, I will have to ask you to leave. I can show you the scar, Philip offered. The lady nodded. No! Taylor stopped him. She glared at the woman. He doesn't have to show you the scar. I already got permission from Mr. Jenkins. You have no authority over me or him. You don't want him to show it, so I'm thinking you must be lying. I don't lie, Taylor insisted. But he doesn't have to prove it to you or to anyone, and asking him to show the scar he's wearing the hat to cover is a violation of his privacy, and I already have permission for him to wear the hat, period. Taylor, I'll just show her. It's no big deal. I understand, Phil, but it's become a matter of principle now, Taylor said loudly. I don't even know who this lady is. She has no right to come over here and demand to see your scar. She should take my word for it, and the fact that she has no idea who she's dealing with when everyone at the school knows who I am, then that tells me that she might just be someone who snuck into the dance to cause trouble. Oops. The woman gasped. Young lady, you are very rude. You are the one being rude. And when the school officials realize that you approached one of their students to simply harass them, they are not going to be very happy with you. And just so you know, my father and mother and brother will be here to see me dance in a floor show. And when I tell them what you tried to do, that you tried to throw me out of the dance, well, I don't even know what's going to happen, but I do know it won't be too good for you. The woman blinked several times. Oh, we'll just see about that. She turned and rushed away. Taylor blinked up at Phil. I am so sorry. I'm so ashamed that happened. She blinked and tears ran over. Please forgive me. Hey, Taylor, it's okay. Karens are everywhere, even here at your fancy school. Taylor gave a soft laugh. My fancy school that I'm currently very ashamed of. It's okay, really. My feelings aren't hurt. And I think it's very cool of you to be so thoughtful that you got permission for my hat ahead of time. You are way cool, Taylor Kino. Yeah, you are, Lyle said from behind. And BTW, I got that all on video. You did? Taylor asked with a grin. Oh, yes, I did. Lyle, you are also way cool, Philip said. He grinned. I know, right? Will you send that to me? Taylor asked. He looked down at his phone. Yep. Taylor watched her phone, waited for it to come in, and immediately sent it to Gabe, along with the message, Was I wrong? Amber came running toward Taylor. There you are. Taylor smiled. Is it time to go get ready? Yes, and I still can't find Madison. Taylor smiled calmly. Okay, well, she's a pro. I'm sure she'll be back there in a minute. It's okay, Amber. Take a deep breath. Your dance is going to be fabulous. I'll be right there. Okay, she hurried off. Taylor handed her phone to Lyle. Thanks for agreeing to live stream for me. If you want, if you don't mind, you can do a little personal live stream in about 15 minutes and tell them who you are and that you'll be live streaming our dance and for them to be looking for it in 15 minutes. Actually, please do that for sure so that you can be sure you get on the air correctly. Lyle smiled. I got this, Taylor. Go get ready. Excuse me. She grinned. Okay. Fingers crossed that Lance doesn't drop me, she said as she turned and motioned over to Agent Ward. He moved forward. I need to go get ready for the dance. He nodded. I'll be outside the locker room doors. Taylor smiled sweetly. Thank you. She scurried away and he followed at a discreet distance. Almost as soon as Taylor left them, a couple of younger guys, closer to Lyle's age, approached the two Keith boys. What's up? One of them said. Philip nodded and smiled. Not much. So, you don't go to this school, right? Right, Lyle replied. The boys smiled at each other. Nice hat, the other boy said, but does it have a flower on it? Philip nodded. Actually, yes, it does. It's a rose, because it's a rose bowl hat. The boy moved closer to examine the hat, and before Philip realized what he was doing, he grabbed the hat and took off. Hey! Phil yelled and took off after him with Lyle right behind. However, the second guy rammed into Philip and sent him down. He tumbled over and Lyle threw himself down next to Philip. Phil, are you okay? Philip rolled to his back and put his hand to his head. Yeah, I think so. Lyle grabbed his arm and started to help him up, but two strong hands lifted him under his arms and stood him up. There you go, buddy. You okay? Lance asked. Philip and Lyle looked up at him and Philip nodded. I think so. Did you hit your head? No, I think it's okay, except that kid stole my hat. It'll be back in just a minute. I sent Jackson after the little freak. Jackson? My running back. They both looked up to see Jackson walking calmly back, brushing dirt off the hat in his hand. He smiled and handed it to Philip. Philip nodded. Thanks, man. No problem. So we were on our way to go get changed for the dance when we saw those punks mess with you. Sorry about that. I think they're freshmen. Jackson laughed. Yep, and the one is going to have some fresh bruises. Phil smiled. Don't understand how one little hat can cause so much trouble. What do you mean? Well, some chaperone tried to throw us out of the dance earlier because the hat is against dress code. And Taylor tried to explain that she got special permission for the hat because I just had brain surgery. And the lady wasn't buying it and walked away in a huff. Lance snorted. I can't believe someone would actually try to throw a Kino out of the school dance. Who was the chaperone? Lance asked. He looked around. That lady over there with the blue sweater on and the scowl on her face looking like her life must suck. Lance chuckled. I don't know her. Do you, Jack? He shook his head. Nope. And I know everyone, so she's probably a parent of a freshman. What do you bet her kid is the one who took your hat? Lance asked. Well, that would just be stupid, Jackson said. Lance nodded. Yeah, it is. But I've done some stupid things in my life, too, so whatever. Hey, we better get going before Amber has a heart attack. See you guys. Thanks for the assist. No prob. Lyle looked at the time and smiled. I'm about to go live for a minute. Watch and see how I do. Philip watched his little brother. The two brothers were very different. Philip was quieter, more serious. Lyle was outgoing and not shy one bit. Lyle smiled at the camera. Hey, everyone. So my name is Lyle Keith. I'm a friend of Taylor's, and I'm going to be handling the live stream of her dance in about 15 minutes. So I just wanted to make sure I can get on with no problem. Wow, there are a lot of people on here already. Sorry, I'm not Taylor, he chuckled. But she will be on here in about 15 minutes, so be on... Oops. Running out of battery. Plug in the phone. What was I saying? But she will be on here in about 15 minutes, so be on the lookout for the notification. Oh, and he reversed the camera. That's my brother, Philip. Say hi, Phil. Philip waved, and Lyle turned the phone back. Okay, so see you in a few. He ended the live stream and smiled at his brother. That was fun. Philip only shook his head. There were like 40,000 people on the live stream in about 2 minutes. That is freaking amazing. Philip shrugged. I guess they were looking forward to seeing Taylor's dance, and instead they got you. Lyle laughed. A few minutes later, they looked up to see the Kinos enter the gym. Mrs. Kino was holding Brittany's hand, and Amari walked right beside her. Ricky was right behind, and right behind him were young Eric and Jordan and JoJo and Logan and Melody. There was a huge murmur as they came in and found Phil and Lyle. "Hey, guys," Ricky said. "How's it going?" "Well, it hasn't been boring," Philip said. Lyle went on to quickly explain everything that had taken place. Bree was ready to do battle, and Ricky had to calm her down. "If you want to confront her, wait until after Taylor's dance." Bree drew a deep breath and nodded. "That's a good idea, because I need to pray away this anger for a minute." Jordan and Melody giggled. They knew that Brianna Adams was a force to be reckoned with. "Well, I'm supposed to go video from that stepladder over there, so I'll see you afterward," Lyle said. Several people approached to greet the Kinos. Amazingly, the chaperone from hell also approached. She waited her turn and then smiled sweetly at the Kinos. "Hello," she said. "Hello," Bree answered, her eyebrows raised. Ricky whispered in her ear, "Deep breath, baby." Bree drew a deep breath. "I just need to inform you that I'm afraid there are no children allowed in the dance." Bree almost choked and stepped forward. Ricky immediately intervened. "Hello, what's your name?" "My name is Jessica Rowe, and I was asked to help chaperone this event." "It's so nice to meet you, Mrs. Rowe. My name is Ricky Kino. This is my wife, Brianna Adams Kino." Her expression changed, and Ricky knew she finally realized who she was dealing with. Ricky smiled. "Since you were asked to help chaperone the event, I'm assuming that there are other chaperones here, too." "Well, yes, of course. And I'm thinking at least one of the school administrators are also here." "Yes, Mr. Strider is here." "And since I haven't ever met you before, then I'm thinking you are a parent of a new student." "Well, yes, I mean, he's a freshman, but he's not just any freshman." Ricky nodded. "Oh, I certainly understand that, because my daughter is a senior, but she's not just any senior." He smiled again. "I'm asking about other chaperones and school admins because I'm thinking you don't have sole authority over this event. Actually, I know you don't. In other words, what you say doesn't necessarily go." She gasped and drew her shoulders up in surprise. He smiled. "It's okay. Calm down. I have another question. You were asked to chaperone, or you volunteered? No, you were asked to chaperone, or you volunteered to chaperone?" "Well, yes, I volunteered." "Why?" "Why? What a silly question. Of course, because I want to be active in my son's school and help any way I can." "So how do you think accusing my daughter of lying and then trying to kick my daughter out of a Christmas dance, the last Christmas dance that she'll be involved in since she's a senior, and then harassing the young man who is a good friend of our family, how do you think that is being helpful?" She stammered a bit. "Oh, that was your daughter. Well, I mean, Mr. Kino, there are rules, and we were told to enforce the rules." "What are the reasons for the rules?" "Well, to keep the children safe, of course, and to teach them good manners." "Well, then, their safety was not threatened by a hat, and since their safety was not in jeopardy, I'm going to assume that you were attempting to teach them good manners. But you see, Mrs. Rowe, in order to teach good manners, you have to have good manners. Coming out and accusing a perfect stranger of lying to you is extremely rude, don't you think?" "Well, I mean, you had no idea who she was. That much is evident. She could have been a low-life scumbag or a pillar of the community, but you assumed she was lying." "I assumed because she was breaking the rules." "She told you she had permission for the hat. Did you even think that maybe she was telling the truth, and the truth could be easily verified? Did you ever give her the benefit of the doubt, especially considering that you and your son were new to this school?" "No, you did not." "Why? Because you want to be in charge. You want to feel important. And being a chaperone makes you feel big, and you wanted to establish your authority. But you have no authority, Mrs. Rowe. None whatsoever. Now, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt that you simply got carried away for a few moments. I know you want to win this battle, but I'm telling you right now, you will not win. Now, about my little ones here. The children, you say, are not allowed? Just because they don't fit into the age limits of freshmen to seniors, 13 to 18, doesn't mean that they're not allowed. I've already spoken with the principal, the head principal, and also to Mr. Strider, and explained that these children were abandoned this morning, and we took them in, but we had promised our daughter we would come and see her dance in the floor show tonight, and we also promised the principal that our family would be part of this show tonight. We couldn't leave the children with a babysitter in their current emotionally distressed state of mind. He understands that we won't be here very long, and they will stay right by our sides. We were given not only his permission, but his blessing. Now, you seem to have tried your very best to ruin this evening for our family. But don't worry. We don't let little things like this get to us, and we don't hold grudges, which is a very good thing for you. That sounds like a threat, she said quickly. Ricky shook his head. If by threat you mean I'm telling you that there will be consequences if you continue to harass my family, you are correct. You need to cut your losses and go away. The show will be starting soon, and I'd better not have to miss 1 second of it. Mr. Kino, let me just tell you this. Bree couldn't take it another minute and stepped forward. Go away, Mrs. Rowe. Now, Bree said between clenched teeth. You lost the battle. Go away. Don't say another word. Go away. Go complain to Mr. Strider or to someone who cares what you have to say. And if you think you're helping your son by making enemies of our family, you are wrong. And when he finds out who it is his own mother was harassing, I don't think he'll be very happy. You're not doing him any favors. But you've been dismissed, Ricky said. Attention, everyone. For those who don't know, my name is Mr. Strider, and I'm the Vice Principal of Brookside High. Welcome to our Christmas formal dance. We have a few people to thank before we introduce you to tonight's entertainment. First, thank you to our senior class president, Shania Little, and her committee, who worked so hard to make this gym look like a palace. Let's give them a round of applause. He waited for a few seconds. They asked me to thank the Freelands and the Kinos, who donated both the decorations and provided the amazing hors d'oeuvres. We understand those were made by a good friend of the Kinos, Jewel Brooks, who is an incredible chef and will be opening her own restaurant in January. I don't know about you, but I'm going to be in line when the doors open. The name of the restaurant is called The Tasting Table, so be on the lookout. Bree glanced over at Mrs. Rowe, who was perhaps looking a little sheepish. Brittany tugged on Bree's hand, and Bree leaned down and picked her up so she could see. Ricky looked over and took Brittany into his arms. There, now you're even higher, he whispered. Mr. Strider went on. We also want to thank all the seniors for making this wonderful night happen. They have a beautiful dance to perform. After that, don't go anywhere because we have a special presentation to make that that Grandmaster Kino is going to help us with. So stay tuned for that. Okay, everyone, I need you to move way out and make a space here in front of the stage and stand behind the ropes that are being placed. He waited a minute while several boys ran out and ushered the crowd away from the center of the floor and placed stanchions and ropes in a large oval in front of the stage. Finally, he nodded. Good job, guys. And now, presented by your Brookside High cheerleaders, whom I'm not going to name, but you all know who they are. Joining them, surprisingly, are a few of our football players, Quincy Lott, Jackson Pitts, and Lance White, and 2 invited dancers from our student body, Madison Walker and Taylor Kino. So without further ado, presenting Holiday Fantasy. Let's give them a hand. He turned off the microphone and stepped aside. Watch up there, Brittany, Ricky whispered. Can you see? Young Eric asked Amari. Amari only shrugged, so young Eric whisked him up onto his shoulders. How about now? Amari grinned. The dance began with an instrumental-only version of Sleigh Ride and the elves running around. The cheerleaders were very cute in their green outfits and red and white striped tights and red circles on their cheeks and noses, their hair in little pigtails. The elves were being called to order by the Santa girls, who were actually stunning in their full red skirts that stood straight out whenever they spun. The sides of their hair was braided back into a bun, and the rest of their hair fell down their backs. The Santa girls were leaving the elves, who had to stay and work. The Santa girls came down off the stage and chose a reindeer, one of the guys, to take them for a ride. The music had changed to It's Beginning to Look a Lot Like Christmas, and included several of the lifts Taylor had told her family about. That part morphed into an even slower All I Want for Christmas Is You, which had a lot of lifts and some pretty romantic dancing. The Santa girls and reindeer then went up to join the elves, who were happy to see them. That portion began with Santa Claus is Coming to Town, the rock version, and then ended with a rousing celebration of rocking around the Christmas tree. And in all, it was about 10 minutes of cuteness, and it had indeed been very entertaining because of the football players messing up a little. Lance actually did almost drop Taylor, but caught her before her head hit the floor. They were heavily applauded. Mr. Strider came back to the microphone. Well, that was phenomenal, wasn't it? Now, before we continue our dance, as I said earlier, I'm going to turn the microphone over to one of our favorite celebrities whose son graduated from Brookside and whose daughter is a senior here. Grandmaster Kino is going to come up and say a few words, and he has a surprise for you. He nodded at Ricky, who set Brittany on the floor and came forward. Everyone applauded as Ricky stepped forward and took the microphone. He turned and offered his brilliant smile as he waited for the applause to end. "Hello, everyone," Ricky said, his masculine voice reverberating throughout the large gym. "Thank you. Your principal and Mr. Strider and I were having a conversation the other day, and I remarked to him that I'm glad that they were all calling this dance a Christmas dance. There are so many attempts these days to distance ourselves from anything to do with religion or morals or integrity and goodness and love. I'm really grateful for this time of year and for Christmas. I realize not all of you believe the same things that we believe, but having a time of year when we can reflect on our lives, on our beliefs, on those we love, on family, and on doing things for others, that can't be a bad thing. It's simply a time of year when family becomes a focus. So as I said, your principal and Mr. Strider and I spoke, and they asked me to take advantage of my son's presence here tonight. Why my son? Well, because he's an alumni of this high school, and today is his 21st birthday, and he has a movie coming out next weekend. He's recently been very busy helping to renovate an old broken-down church, and he had a red carpet movie premiere event last night. He barely got any sleep. Then he had a martial arts demo for our entire neighborhood this morning, and he's here tonight to see his sister perform. He went into this week thinking that we wouldn't be celebrating his birthday. We wouldn't have time, and he never said a word about it. That's because he's not all about himself. He understood that the things we were working on, being in service to others, that is what's important. There would be no time to celebrate his birthday, and he had no problem with that. Still, I'm hoping you will help us to celebrate. Me standing up here laying props on my own son was not my intention. I'm only doing this because your principal mentioned to me that he wished he could give you, the students of Brookside High, a special Christmas gift. And since tonight is my son's birthday, and he's an alumni, Eric thought of a gift. Actually, he thought of 2 gifts. So, Eric, please come on up and take the mic and explain the gifts. Young Eric set Amari down. He walked up and took the mic while the kids applauded. Bree looked over to see if the chaperone woman was still nearby, but she was gone. Bree began to feel silly for having such feelings of animosity toward her. Lately, it seemed her emotions were way out of whack, and she hadn't been feeling well. She had a feeling when she got to the doctor on Monday, he would tell her that she was perimenopausal. Young Eric smiled as he spoke into the microphone. "Hello, everyone. It's always fun to be back in my old high school gym where I spent so many hours. Good times." "Happy birthday, Eric," someone yelled out. Eric grinned. "Thanks, man." Taylor watched her brother with pride. The Santa girl standing next to her leaned over to whisper, "Good grief, Taylor, your brother is totally hot." Taylor smiled. "He is cute, isn't he?" "Yeah, cute. That's what I was thinking," Amber said with a giggle. Jackson put his arm around his girlfriend. "Hey, Amber, I'm standing right here." She giggled, and Taylor smiled. Young Eric put the microphone to his lips. "So, my father mentioned that I had a movie premiere last night. It was my very first premiere and my very first movie. It was a real blast making that movie. The movie is The Resurrection of Elijah Beck, and it's about a guy who messed up totally, and he goes about remaking himself, fixing what he can fix, turning everything around, and of course, finding love in the process. So because this school is my alma mater and because it's my birthday, I wanted to invite you all to see the movie next weekend when it comes out. All you have to do is show up at either the Midway or the Plaza Theaters in Newport and show your Brookside High School student ID and you'll get in. My gift to you." He waited for the applause and cheering to end. "Now, my father said I had 2 gifts. The second one is a special performance from my cousin, whom I think of as my brother. So, how many of you have been on social media and heard my cousin Logan sing?" There was a giant whoop as people all cheered. "Well, Logan is working on writing his first album, and he sang live on America Can Dance a few weeks ago. I asked him if he would do a song for us tonight, and he agreed. He even brought his guitar and a friend to play the drums. He wouldn't tell me what song he's going to do, so I'll get him to tell you. Logan Adams, come on up. Everyone cheered as Logan came up to the mic. He motioned at his friend from UCLA who was plugging in his electric drums on stage and then bending a microphone toward his mouth. Logan hugged young Eric and took the mic from him and then went up on stage and put the mic in a mic stand and went to the side of the stage and picked up his guitar and checked the amps and went back to stand in front of the mic. Hey everyone, I'm Logan Adams and this guy about to rock. Hey everyone, I'm Logan Adams, and I and this guy are about to rock it on the drums I'm Logan Adams, and this guy about to rock it on the drums is Steven Tyler, and yeah, that's his real name. The kids all laughed. So I agreed to do this song as Eric's gift to you, but it's also my gift to Eric. The song I'm going to do is Birthday, the one by the Beatles, and I want all of you to sing it with me. You'll know it when you hear it. Get ready, because we're about to rock this house and blow the roof off. He nodded at Stephen, who started with the hard beat. Logan came in with the guitar, and the kids did indeed recognize the song immediately. They started clapping and jumping, and Logan finally started to sing, "You say it's your birthday." Logan encouraged everyone to sing with him, and in only a few seconds, the entire gym had kids jumping up and down and going crazy. And when they got to the part where the lyrics state, "I would like you to dance," the kids went wild. Young Eric grinned and hugged Jordan to him. He couldn't speak to her because the music and kids were too loud. He just laughed. JoJo put his hand on Eric's shoulder, and Eric turned and hugged him too. Lyle Keith was still on the ladder live streaming, and a lot of other kids had their phones out and were videoing. Amari and Brittany were laughing and dancing. The entire thing was a riot, a huge success, and at the end of the song, Logan spoke over the crowd. "You guys were freaky fantastic. I'm turning the dance back over to your DJ. Night, everybody." The kids screamed and cheered and applauded as Logan and Steve packed up their gear and left the stage, and the DJ took over. Logan hugged Eric. Taylor joined her family. "You guys are the best." Ricky hugged his daughter. "You were so good, Taylor. I'm so proud of you." "You were awesome, Tay-Tay," young Eric said. Logan and JoJo hugged her. "You really were." "I didn't realize you'd gotten so good," Logan said. "Well, I knew you were," she returned. "Logan, you are a star." Logan shook his head as Jordan and Melody forced their way to Taylor and hugged her and praised her. Finally, Philip found his way to her. "You rocked it, Taylor, but Lance almost dropped you." "Actually, that was my fault. I shifted my body weight too soon." Bree stroked her hand over Taylor's hair. "You were so good, Taylor, and I'm so proud of you." "Thanks, Mom," Taylor said. She turned to Lyle as he approached. "Did you get everything?" He nodded with a grin as he handed the phone to her. "Yeah, and there were like over 1 million people watching. I think you broke the internet." Taylor smiled but shook her head. "That's not even close to the records, but it will still generate a bunch of money for Gabe's foundation. He's helping so many people. God is so good." At that moment, Madison came over to greet the Kinos, and they complimented her on her dancing. She thanked them and put her hand on Philip's shoulder and leaned over to Taylor. "Mind if I steal your date for a dance?" Taylor smiled. "No, of course not. Have fun." Philip shrugged and smiled and headed out onto the dance floor. At the same time, a young girl came over and asked Lyle to dance, and right behind her, Lance approached. "Hello, Kinos," he said brightly. He held his hand out to Ricky. They shook hands. "You did a great job," young Eric said. "Thanks, I almost dropped her." "But you didn't, so good catch," JoJo said with a chuckle. Lance grinned at the guy who'd been his idol for years. He turned to Taylor. "So, Taylor," Lance began, "I was wondering if I could have a dance. I mean, a regular dance." She hesitated only briefly and then nodded. "Let's dance, but only one, because I want to go change out of this costume." She smiled up at her family. "Well, if you guys are leaving, I'll see you about 11. She hugged them quickly, including Amari and Brittany, and Lance smiled at her family. "Nice to see you." They nodded at Lance. "Behave," Ricky said. "Yes, sir." The family watched them dance for a few seconds. Agent Ward stepped up. Ricky shook his hand. "You got this?" "I got it," Agent Ward answered. And that is the end of chapter 17.